Looking at practice exercise type 3, this is again supposed to be a quick exercise compared to type 1 and type 4 exercises. To be able to do these, you need to look at what has happened. If we were to call the starting object X and where it's going to is Y, whatever we have to do to X to make Y, we need to do to A to make B. So this first one is an easy example. They do get more difficult than this. In this one, if we look at the black trapezium, it has simply been rotated through 90 degrees. So we could expect the same thing to happen with the black rectangle here. The white circle has moved anti-clockwise through 1/4 turn. Similarly, we'd expect the same for A, so that our white circle would end up in the left-hand section of the rectangle, and then the arrow hasn't moved, so we'd expect an up arrow, which is C. In this one, there's been a bit of a misprint, so we can't really consider the colour of the objects. We can just consider the rotation of the no entry symbols. So we start with this one here. You'll be able to see that that has rotated through 45 degrees. So from its original position, it's 45-degree angle. So we'd expect the same thing to happen to this one here. So rotating that through 45-degree angle is going to put our arrow pointing in this direction. That's going to rule out everything but A and D. As you can see in A and D, it's only the bottom right hand side that's going to help us now to determine the difference between these. This has been rotated through 135 degrees. So if we do the same with this arrow, we will get, with this arrow through 135, we'll get to a horizontal arrow. So we should be looking for the two diagonal corners to be as illustrated in this box here, which corresponds to D. Then these next ones, I'm going to give you a minute to attempt the question before going through the answer. That's slightly longer than you will get in the actual UCAT, but we are practicing. So starting with the exercise 55 now. And stop. Okay, so what you should see here is that circles mean squares and squares mean circles. So if we look at this diagonal, we've got grey, white, white, grey, white, black. Now that translates to the colours of the squares on the other side. So we've got grey, white, white, grey, white, black. And then the colours of the squares on the left-hand side: white, black, grey, grey, white, black is the corresponding colours of the circles: white, black, grey, grey, black, white. So in our example here, we should have squares that are coloured grey, black, white, grey, white, black. and we should have circles that are coloured black, black, white, grey, grey, white. Okay, so if you take a look at the examples there, we can see that the squares correspond neatly to grey, black, white, grey, white, black in B, with the circles black, black, white, grey, grey, white. So the correct answer is B. Now, looking at exercise 56, this is quite a tricky one because there's a lot going on. But if I draw some more dominoes on the right hand side, we can have a go at trying to populate these as we go along. So what you should see is that it's going to be a combination of sides of shapes and numbers of shapes that are going to translate into the domino. So you'll see that the top half of the domino, so this half of the domino, is reflecting the numbers of shapes in these two objects here. So 3 objects in the white is going to be turned into 3 objects in the black of the opposite type. So we've got 3 objects. So these are the black dominoes. Oh, that's not black. It's going to be quite a tricky way to illustrate this. If I colour this domino in black. White. I'll use a yellow, that'll show up. So when I'm doing yellow it's supposed to be white, but that should show up on the black, that's fine. Okay, so now I've got my dominoes ready. What you'll see then is I need to have 3 objects, but they need to be cups. So I need to have 3 cups on this side. And I need to have, therefore, 4 circles on the other side. And then the number of sides in the shape is then translated into the bottom. So the black object is going to give me the 3 in the bottom right, in other words the white object round here. So that's going to be 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. That's because the object in the black on the left has 3 sides. That's the triangle on the left. And then I've got the sort of diamond is 4-sided, and that's going to be circles. That's going to be cups. So then I'm going to have 4 cups. I'll have to see which one that looks like. And that is obviously, when you look at it like that, it's obviously answer A. Now, sometimes it takes you a lot longer to explain them like I have explained that than it does to see it. But hopefully that long-winded explanation, you've been able to see how you get from each of those, so from X to Y and A to B. Okay, let's do a minute on number 57 and then we'll go through the answer to number 57. Time beginning now. and stop. So hopefully with this one you can spot that what we've got is a reflection in that plane. So we've got the mirror image. So if we do the same with this object here, then we're going to have one which is in the bottom right hand side. And then our arrow is obviously going to come like this, meaning the answer is B. Now before you have a go at exercise 58, I just want to add something which I think has been missed out of this one. So it's not going to be a very difficult one to do to get the right answer, but I want you to see if you can work out the reason. So I'll only give you 30 seconds on this because I do believe there was a mistake in the example answers that they've given there. So now with that correction on this one, I'd like you to have a go at 58, but just 30 seconds because I've effectively given you the answer. Okay guys, so this one, what's happening is that the object is rotating through 45 degrees and appearing then in the middle of the next side along, so hence the middle here. And then what's happening is its mirror image is appearing, and the point where those two images overlap is then being coloured in black. And so here is the problem with the ones that none of the examples they'd given you as the answers could possibly work. So first of all, our square needed to be rotated through 45 degrees. So it needed to be rotated through this angle, which means this shape here, and appear in the middle. I've drawn a bad square there, just let me try and improve that a little bit. Okay, and then its mirror image needed to appear directly opposite it. So this one here. But here's where the question went wrong. We needed to shade in black the area of overlap. And none of the examples below had the correct answer, so it should have been B. But obviously B with that little bit of shading. So that wasn't a brilliant question, but hopefully you could see why none of the ones that were there beforehand would fit. So having a look ahead then, what I'd like you to do is go through the remaining examples in this pack and see if you can get the time down to about 30 seconds each. And then come back to the video where I'll go through giving you a hint for each one in case you found, telling you the right answer and giving you a hint in case you found it difficult. So if you stop the video now, go to the questions, have a go at the remaining type 3 questions, then come back to the video and resume from this point and I will go through the answers. So hopefully you have gone away and done some of these questions. So I'm just going to run through the answers and give you a couple of hints just in case you have struggled with any of the questions. So for practice exercise 59, the correct answer is B. That's because the shape on the inside, the number of sides on the inside become the number of sides on the outside. So if you look at the top left hand side here, we have 2, 3, 4, 5 on the inside, becomes 5 on the outside. 4 on the outside becomes 4 on the inside. So that means that we need the 6 on the outside to become 6 on the inside, the 3 on the inside to become 3 on the outside, which is B. For exercise 60, we need to add the mirror image to each shape and then reverse the order of all the shapes. So a square becomes a rectangle, a triangle becomes a square, and the trapezium becomes a hexagon. So if we have a look at the ones in the bottom, we need something that ends up in the order of square, square, rectangle, and the only one that has square, square, rectangle is D. Practice exercise 61. Hopefully you notice straight away that this is the net of a box. So if you look at the top two, so going from X to Y, they give the same box. So we need to look for one that is the same box as when A goes to B. We want the same box in A and B, and the correct answer to that is C. Practice exercise 62. This is about the area around the shape now. So the shape fits into the gap between those two triangles as we go from X to Y. You can see how the trapezium fits in to that shape between the two triangles here. There we go. And the other thing is that the overall shape is that square. So let me just make that green so you can see. So the overall square, the green square there, matches the shape in the middle here. So we want the overall shape here to be a square, like this one is here. And then we want that shape to be able to fit in. So the answer here, this green shaded shape here, so the answer is C. So looking at practice exercise 63, there's a bit of a trick question to start off with, because it looks like you're going to have a circle with an arrow pointing in every direction, but then when you have a look at the actual question, when we're looking at the A goes to B, there isn't the possibility of that being the right answer. So we need to look at something else, and it's a bit of a tricky one, this, I think, because the actual solution is that every circle has an arrow pointing towards it. So in this case, if you look as you go from A to B, the only circle that doesn't have an arrow pointing towards it is the one to the top left. So that means C. In practice exercise 64, each row corresponds to the sequence of arrows corresponds to what to do with that particular dot. So as we go from X to Y, you'll see that this dot, which I've coloured in green, needs to go across one, down one, and across one. So it will end up across one, then down one, and then across one. So it will end up in this position here. The next one down, this black one here, is going to go down one, diagonally one, and up one. So it's going to go down one, then it's going to go diagonally, and then it's going to go up one. So it's going to end up in this position here, and so on. Now the other thing to note is that the dots then take on the colour that corresponds to the original sequence of colours. So anything on the top line is just going to be an open circle, anything on the next line down is going to be a black coloured in circle, anything on the next line down is going to be grey, and anything on the bottom line is going to be hatched. So that doesn't change, the dots don't take their shading with them, they adopt the shading of the row they're on. Which means as we go from A to B, you carry out the same transformations and the solution is A. Practice exercise 65, we've got intersecting lines being represented by circles. The first thing to note is that each line represents a circle. Circles that are touching represent intersections on the line. So if you look at the top example, you'll see that there are 3 circles touching. If I do a key circle here. That key circle represents this line here, which is intersected 3 times. And then this next line here, do it in a different colour. This line here is representing this circle here, which is intersected 4 times. So that's how the lines are turned into circles. So when we do that with the example, you'll see this line needs to be intersecting 3 times, and then this one needs to be intersecting twice, and this one needs to be intersecting twice. So the only one that follows that pattern, so this one, and then we've got this one, and then we've got this one, is B. Now we see another way of approaching the rotating arrows here, and this is, instead of them pointing at a circle, which wouldn't work in this example, instead of them pointing at a circle, now it's to do with a clock and rotations. So if it's pointing straight upwards, it's on the hour, so that's not going to affect anything. Then we add up the remaining time and we see where that would mean the arrow is pointing. So we've got 2 hours, disregard them, so it's the 3/4 of an hour that's important, so that's going to be an arrow pointing to the left. Here we've got the total here, we're left with 1/4 of an hour once we've added everything up, which means an arrow pointing to the right, so C is the correct answer. That's just a duplicate. So those are the exercise 3s that I gave you. So this page is just a duplicate, I'm afraid, of the one above, so I'm sorry to have included that by accident. So now we're going to have a look at the type 4s, which are much more like the exercises that are the type 1 variety. So if you want to start by having a look at this question, you'll see that in a type 4 exercise, we're back to having set A and set B. But instead of having to designate which set each object belongs in other words A, B or neither, which is what you have to do with type 1, now you have to pick out of 4 objects which one belongs to set A and which object belongs to set B. So these are a little bit different to the original type 1s, but they've got a lot of similarities. So if we do this 79 together, what you'll see is that in set A, we've got 2 central shapes sitting next to each other, which I'll colour in. 2 central shapes sitting next to each other. And if they're sitting next to each other, then we are going to add the number of sides in each shape. So we've got 3 and 3. Because they're sitting next to each other, we're going to add them together to make the shape they're sitting inside of, which is 6. If they're intersecting, like they are here, we're going to subtract. So here we've got a hexagon, take away heart because they're intersecting. So that means that the number on sides of the shape on the outside is 6 minus 2, which is 4, which is here. So that's the rule for set A. So if we have a look at which of the objects belong in set A, so these in A, the intersecting objects, it should be 4 minus 3, so it should have a circle around them, but it doesn't, so it can't be A. If we have a look at B, we've got a pentagon intersecting with a circle. So that should be 5 minus 1, which is 4. So that is actually correct. That's the correct answer. So we'll look at C and D so that you can see why that's a problem. Here we've got 3 minus 2, so we should have a circle around that, but we've got a pentagon, so we don't add those 2 together. And then in this last example, those 2 shapes are not intersecting. They've both got 5 sides, so we should have a 10-sided object around them, but we don't. So the correct answer for set A is B. Now I'm going to give you, now that you've thought about that, think about mirroring. I want you to have a look at set B, thinking about mirroring, and see if you can immediately come up with the solution for set B. So I'll give you a minute. And stop there. So hopefully you've seen with the mirrored relationship that if the objects are intersecting, you add the number of sides to get the number on the outside object. So for example, 2 sides plus 2 sides equals 4 sides. 3 sides minus 3 sides is no sides. So when we have a look at the examples, the only 2 that could possibly be correct in this example, the 2 overlapping objects in A add up to a hexagon, which is the correct outside shape there. So that is A for that one. Okay, so we're going to have a look now at practice exercise 80. I'd like you to have a go at this yourself. So starting with a minute to have a think about it, and then a minute to do the assignment. Off you go. And stop. Now this one could have been quite confusing because there's lots of different shapes. However, if you look at set A and set B, you'll quickly notice that the shapes there isn't a pattern to, so the shapes is just a bit of a distractor here. What does matter, however, is the colour of the shapes, and you might have noticed that white is always on the bottom, black is always on top of white, hashed is always on top of black, and grey is always on top of everything. So you can't have them in any other order. When we look at set B, it's the opposite way round. So with set B, you've got grey at the very bottom, then hashed, then black with white on top. So with that in mind, the only one in the first row that could possibly belong to set A is B with black on the bottom, then hashed, then grey. And the only one that could possibly belong to set B is A with grey on the bottom, then black, then white. Just mark those in. Well done. So we've got a few more of the practice exercises of type 4. So if you would like to stop the video, go and have a go at the remaining type 4 video exercises, and then come back and I'll go through the answers, giving you some